And even, and of course, there's all these things add value, and it's good to have certainty and have continuous testing going on, that you know that you're doing the right things and you've done it right. That's all great, but the final test is really in the market, nowhere else.
Because my focus has changed a little bit from efficiency. You want to use Kanban for efficiency, to more using Kanban for effectiveness.
I laughed and I said to a CEO, actually, you don't understand. Every single week, I'm 5 experiments older than you. When you die, how old do you want to be? 2 experiments old or 20,000?
Actually, one of our customers like this very much, because they think that this way they can gradually to go agile instead of just another revolutionized way of working.
It's the old saying, right? Stop starting, start finishing. It's not that hard really, but I think WIP limits is a really good way of pointing that out for us.
Well, the nice thing is that maybe 9 out of 10 of the things that the community thinks are valuable turn out to be valuable. Some of those 9 things, 1 or 2 of them are going to be 10 times more valuable than the rest combined.
We most work with very big customers, like 1,000 developers, and also in the finance IT industry, there is domain knowledge that's very special, and there is IT technology, so that's natural to part of the world. So we find that using Kanban and using the idea of gradual improvement, that make people feel that they just feel safer and they can control the pace. But instead of using other more like cookbook type style of transformation, that people change a lot of titles, people change way of work. And a lot of time, I noticed that a lot of Scrum Master, they say they care people a lot, but they give you a process to follow. I really respect everybody is the smart people, and they don't do dumb things just because they're dumb. Right? It's because they are working in the dumb system, and so when you and the system's done for the reason, and you have to understand the background.
The Kanban community has always been much more metrics oriented than the more Scrum-oriented Agile world. And the pre-Agile was very metrics-oriented, but to its detriment. They actually did more harm than good in a lot of cases with that approach. I published a series while I was still at Rally, quantifying the impact of Lean, Kanban, Agile. And I think that's sort of the pinnacle of the work that I've done. And I really had a lot of these ideas while I was at Carnegie Mellon working on a PhD. But so by going to Rally, I got this data set of 10,000 teams. And with that, I could crawl around in it and mine it for some really rich information. So the Agile, Lean, Kanban world is full of a bunch of anecdote and a bunch of intuition and things that make common sense, but nobody could quantify how much of an impact doing these things were. So that work really was sort of and I think we did a great job with it. We made it very context sensitive so that you could say not only whether doing A was better than B and how much A was better than B, but under what conditions A was better than B. And there might be some conditions where B was actually better than A.
It's really lifting from a team perspective to a service perspective, and the service really having to do with the customer. You get contact with the customer, get the request, and the customer gets its value. And the kind of service we're speaking about here can be very varied. It could be anything from delivering PCs and building servers to creating totally new services, like a new SAP implementation, so to say. And here you can have a lot of different teams that need to synchronize, they need to cooperate to actually get something out that has some value. Mostly using Kanban as a method for change and a method for me for continuous improvement. And I'm very much inspired by Toyota Kata, the improvement kata and the coaching kata, to get there. That's how I'm using it. I'm using really Kanban as an engine to understand the current condition and slowly reach targets by tweaking these different policies. So Kanban as such has this built in, so to say, it has a will of its own to actually improve flow, of course. And that's great. But sometimes you may need to do other things. You may need to focus on other capabilities to succeed.
A graphic business novel commitment that explains the basics of our real options model. And the reason I'm really proud of that accomplishment is that it's been a long journey, and we have started looking at the real options model back in 2004. So we want to have a book that was compelling to read, easy to digest, and that actually puts the work load not on the reader. We want to put the workload on the creator. So that meant that we were looking for an easy medium to digest, which is a graphic novel. So we were inspired by the book The Goal by Eli Goldratt. That's a business novel, but it's still a book with a lot of words. So we wanted to have it more engaging. So that's why we created a graphic novel. In the end, we didn't do it for the recognition. It's actually, it was a passion, or still is a passion of Chris and myself, to work in this field and elaborate that and see what can be concluded from that. We had a whole long search for the right graphic artist, which we eventually found. He turned out to be our graphic artist as well as our mentor in creating a good story. And that's how that whole graphic novel came about. In general, what we see is that when people have read the book, what we notice is that their thinking has somewhat changed and their vocabulary has changed. So they're approaching problems more from an options perspective. So how can I increase the number of options available? How can I push a certain decision point out towards the future and make sure I get enough information to make that decision?
You see, very often the problem is that we try to map the value stream and we think, we want to see what's going on, but this is knowledge work, and a lot of what's going on is not on those boards. That's the outcome of our thinking, not the thinking. And with Park and Flow, what we do instead is we visualize the learning stream, how we learn, our observations, bringing learning to the surface. And value streams and learning streams are like two sides of the same ladder. You need both pretty much to make progress. Okay, so they really work really well together. And is mind-blowing how people are hiring Popcorn Flow for. It's being used in many organizations, small, large, for doing things, for example, like retrospectives, even just in time, just to reflect on how we do things. But the thing is, like, Popcorn Flow now is used as well by kids to think creatively. We have problems and they think about how to address those problems. Somebody was talking about his hamster. His three teenagers, a dad essentially, his three teenagers came up with ways to, they created a seesaw just to help this hamster out. So it's improving the life of hamsters. And I know of social activists that are beginning to use this to fight things like poverty, racism, and it's activism by invention, really. Like you invent something that others use to actually change their world.
The nomination mentions the Kanban in Action book that I wrote together with Joachim, which I'm of course really proud of, but also the work that I did for the Salvation Army in Indonesia, which is it's super close to my heart, of course, because that was really, I put my heart and soul into it, and I used every ounce of Kanban skill I had in my body to help the hospital there. We had a really good discussion with one team. They were more than happy to take on new work, but not as inclined to finish work. So the sad part about this is that it manifests itself in the form of problems, or if you want to be positive, you can say unrealized improvement opportunities. Just the fact that we went over to a flow-based and focusing on flow actually made some. I had at least 3 or 4 conversations where people say it's actually fun to work here now. I can see that it moves, and I feel more a part of this. It's not like I'm requesting something and then I wait for a while and then the wrong thing comes out in the other end. I'm now part of this on a daily basis, and that made me really, really happy when I hear that people actually say that it's fun to be part of our team.
It's very interesting to see where Kanban is going, and for me at least, it's really mapping what David is doing with enterprise service and such. It's very mapping to where I'm heading. The whole community and what David is doing is giving me value all the time.
I feel that Lean become a taboo word sometimes because the people just feel that it's manufactured, so we're software, we're different. So Lean doesn't work here. And I think there's certainly more similarities between the manufacturer and the software development.
Then after a while I started to not really be able to distinguish between the two, and I mean, is it Kanban per se, or is it just flow, or so I go very much back and forth, and I'm quite pragmatic around that, right? But so whatever floats your boat.
I think the most important thing right now is now that Agile is accepted as a method of work, and being inclusive there with Agile, Lean, Kanban, all these methods. Now the challenge is, now that we have that basis from our IT perspective, we know that IT is the basis for a lot of organizations now. Let's make that work and create real learning organizations. And I think that will be the challenge for the next 20, 30 years.
In all the things that we can measure in software, productivity, predictability, quality, responsiveness, one of the things that people really want to be able to measure but find it very difficult to measure is delivered value, or what I like to refer to as the build the right thing metric. So we're working on this thing called a product success index, and I'll be able to predict pretty early on whether you're on the right track or whether you need to steer and pivot. And that sort of predictive power, I think, will be incredibly valuable for us.
I see the world like the ocean. Everything is on the move. You stop and analyze one wave, the next one is coming, and then the next one, and then a big tsunami, and so on. Sometimes in Italy people say, it's all well and good, but I have feet on the ground. And I say, you don't understand. The world is not like you think it is. If your feet are on the ground, the ocean is on your head, is over you.